Okay, the next step in Module 4 is an exploration of the new, let's say, movement around learning analytics. This is not a design of learning environments, as we discussed in the previous unit, but now we're talking about using big data, large amounts of data, to analyze what students perform when they are working in an electronic learning environment, and to inform teachers and students alike about these let's say, performances in order to help them to improve their performance commitment, for instance, to group work or other, let's say, indications which ask for a change or adaptation of the learning environment according to the students' characteristics. Okay, so I'm using a report which was prepared last year in the UK, and I received this report by Martijn Meter, who succeeded me at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, and he's very active in the domain of learning analytics. So I'm very glad that he shared this document with me, because it helped me to orient myself on this topic in order to be able to introduce you in this domain of learning analytics. The report has been added to the documents which are included in this particular module, because the assignment also has to do with learning analytics, analyzing basically a particular project as an example of learning analytics. Okay, let's quickly discuss the characteristics of these kinds of endeavors, then look at a few examples, and then do a SWOT analysis, which is included in the report I mentioned. Well, of course, the definition is also, as always, helpful. Learning analytics is the measurement, collection, and analysis and reporting of data about learners and their contexts for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. So that's basically what I explained, I think. So measurement, collection, analysis, reporting of data about learners and their contexts for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments also in which it occurs, learning. Okay, the sources which are used, it's always about big data, so enormous amounts of data. Student information systems, which have records of student grades, perhaps student characteristics, as well as prior education or the choice of particular paths and programs within the university. Electronic learning environments, and also, you can imagine that electronic learning environments like Blackboard or Canvas do record a lot of information about what students are actually doing within that environment, the discussion or the activities as such. And library data, which have the same, let's say, function, collecting information about which books people have been using, which other sources people have been consulting, using that information to get an idea about what students are like or what they are doing. So benefits are, of course, the students themselves and also the institutions, which are always, let's say, eager to improve the learning environments, to adapt them to the specific wishes and needs of the students. As far as I know, the examples we have seen are mostly in higher education, where all these data sources are available, less in secondary and primary education, perhaps because these systems are not in place there or are not yet in place there. Perhaps that will gradually change as well. Most schools in the Netherlands do have an electronic learning environment, although the use is not often very advanced, but basically as a repository for documents, etc., etc. Okay, let's see. Some examples. Well, these examples are included in the document I have included in this particular part of the Canvas site. So what you can see is fostering retention is a very important purpose of many projects. So identifying at which particular moment students drop out and what their history is within the institution, within the program, which made them drop out, perhaps, or which contributed to the decision to drop out. Fostering collaboration, which has to do with working in electronic learning environments, having a look at, the social networks which can be created by looking into the, let's say, the interactions between students within a group or between students and the teacher, etc., etc. And personalizing education, again, that has to do with preferences of students, for instance, preferences for pictorial information as opposed to text, or preferences for particular sequencing of the information, of the tasks and the assignments, etc., etc., as we have been discussing. So these are all examples which do in fact show that that really some very important results can be attained here. When I first showed an example of such a learning analytics project to my former boss, the director of the University of the Vrije Universiteit, for whom I was working, he still is an epidemiologist, so he's used to working with big data sets, etc. His comment was, he's not an educationalist, as you probably understand. He's from the health sciences, a biologist by origin. So when I gave him an example of such a project, his comment was a solution in search of a problem, which is, of course, not very positive. But so perhaps there is a lot of work going on which may not be wanted for, because nobody is interested in all kinds of analysis. But when you see the examples in this particular project, in this particular report, you will agree with me that there are really interesting advancements here, and that we can really do a step forward, set a step forward, to foster retention, to foster collaboration, to personalize education. For instance, you can also think of what is called in the Netherlands these matching meetings, in which prospective students meet with people from the program they are planning to apply for, in order to get a better understanding of what the program entails and what is required from the students and what their main activities will be in the program, etc., etc. So these matching talks and matching meetings are supposed to give the students a better idea of the requirements or the desired characteristics of students enrolling in a particular program. Well, you can imagine that data could be collected in order to improve and optimize these meetings and get the best results out of them. And that's what people, I think, at the VU University at the moment, at the Vrije Universiteit, are trying to accomplish. Okay, so there were already some evaluative remarks. I just took this SWOT analysis from the report I mentioned earlier, the UK report. And it reflects a bit the things we were already discussing, perhaps. The strengths are, of course, the availability of large volumes of data, advanced interfaces to work on these data, powerful, even increasingly precise models to personalize learning, and growing insights into learning strategies. And the latter two strengths are really important strengths, which come as a sort of byproduct, you might say, of these projects, but which do really change the field, the education field, so to speak, because we do know more about models to personalize learning, and we do know more about learning strategies, which can actually be used to improve the quality of education. The weaknesses are perhaps the potential misinterpretation of data. You can imagine that these data are quite flat, and you can easily conclude something from it which is not well reflected in the data as such. Incoherence in the data sources. You can imagine that when you combine data from information systems and electronic learning environments, you get problems because the data simply do not match, and do not tell the same story. Lack of significant results from qualitative research. So you can imagine that you also do interviews with people in the course of these projects, and that these interviews do not confirm what you got from the quantitative data. And of course, the general idea of information overload. The opportunities are improved self-reflection, self-awareness, and learning among students, because they are confronted with these outcomes and do realize that the data do indicate their perhaps lack of connectedness to particular groups, or their lack of involvement or engagement in particular learning situations. Feeding of learning analytics results to other systems to help decision making in general, to improve, as I said, for instance, the system of matching meetings, as we are working on in the Netherlands. Well, you can imagine, as we talk about threats, that ethical and data privacy issues are really a big problem. Already in the examples I gave, you could have thought, well, what about privacy here? Over-analysis and lack of generalizability of the outcomes. Misclassification of patterns has to do with perhaps with the incoherence or the misinterpretation of the data, and contradictory findings, as I already said, which may come out of combining, data from various sources like information systems and electronic learning environments. So these let's say indicators in this SWOT can be used, as I'm going to ask you in the assignment, to analyze a particular project, which we are going to, we're not discussing here, but which is carried out in Australia, and which we'll have a look at when you do the assignment. Okay, so that was about the learning analytics endeavor, which is new and which is promising, I think, although there are some issues to deal with and some barriers to overcome.